Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. And I've got to admit, it's a bittersweet moment for me at the moment because my son has decided to take a year working as a digital nomad while travelling across Southeast Asia. And yes, tech will ensure we are in close contact, but between you and me, I'm going to miss him and Rory like crazy every day. But this got me thinking about how the workplace is changing now, and younger people in particular now expect to be able to work from anywhere, on any device, in any location. And when thinking about this, it led me to a story of a successful Estonian entrepreneur called Karoli Hindriks. And she noticed that the biggest problem for her clients in international hiring was not the hiring process, but getting people into the country. So she took an incredible leap of faith. She made the decision to pivot her company, Jobbatical, away from the business model that in 2018 earned the company place among Forbes' list of Europe's 10 most exciting SMEs. And instead, she set out about building a platform that could automate the immigration and relocation process and provide businesses with a lifeline for retaining talent amidst this global skill shortage. So her business model focused on removing the friction of labour mobility. And this became more critical to businesses than ever last year in 2022 as worker priorities continued to shift in favour of borderless working in the wake of the pandemic. Now, yes, business is booming and the company generated 8x ARR growth in the last 12 months alone. So I've invited her on the podcast today to learn more about her origin story and how she was born with this entrepreneurial spirit, founding her first company at just 16 and become the youngest inventor in her native Estonia to have a registered patent. And by 23, she became the youngest ever CEO at MTV, and in 2021 gave a TED Talk and was the first person from Estonia ever to be invited on the main TED stage in the US. But before we start today's interview, I just wanted to give a quick mention to our sponsors, because this month the podcast is brought to you by Flipper, which is the #1 marketplace to buy and sell online businesses and startups. So, do you run your own online business? And have you ever considered selling your website, your store, your tech, or your app? Because with world-class combined matching technology, dedicated brokers and end-to-end services, all at the most efficient price, Flipper is making it simple to sell your online business. So to get a free valuation, visit my friends at flipper.com/techtalks, where each month thousands of online business owners exit with Flipper. Again, visit flipper.com/techtalks. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Estonia, where today's guest is going to talk about why the passport needs an upgrade and how she built a platform that could automate the immigration and relocation process and provide businesses with a lifeline for retaining talent. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
So yes, I'm Karoli Hindriks and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Jobbatical. And in simple words, what we are doing is we are digitalizing the employee immigration relocation process. So what my team wakes up every morning to do is basically making moving to a new country as easy as booking a flight. So that's what we're building towards.
Wow, it's incredibly cool. There's a lot to unpack there. So I'm curious, if I was to take you back in time for a moment, can you remember where your passion for tech and travel and the ability to work anywhere came from, or something that put you on the path that you're on today? Or as they say in those movies, what's your origin story?
Yes, the origin story. Yeah, I think the origin story started a lot earlier than I founded Jobbatical. But the origin story was that I was lucky to be an exchange student in America when I was 17, and it was just after, and like this is how short the time was. Like it was like 5-6 years only after the Soviet tanks had left the country. So this is how new everything was. So I was lucky to get to study in America. And I remember, Neil, the moment. It was 6 months since my arrival there, when I was sitting in a cafe in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I was thinking that if everybody could do or have the experience that I'm having here in America right now, just seeing things from a totally new perspective, that the world would be much better. And so I think like my passion for this borderless living and really exploring the world. And that started from this experience.
Wow, what an amazing story. And of course, that path would lead you to Jobbatical, which also has an inspiring story and also a pivot too. So can you share that story around the company?
Happy to. So the story of Jobbatical actually started when I was lucky enough to get to a think tank called Singularity University. So it was located in Mountain View, California, in NASA Ames Research Center. So that's where we studied, that's where we lived. And I'm a runner, so I run a lot. And in the mornings, I was running to the seaside. And every time I passed Google, and passing Google and, thinking, this is Google and there are all those great companies here, I started to ask, why are the Googles of the world here? Like, what's up with this place? And I started to look into it, and I realized it's not that people are born smarter there. It's because smart people circled the globe to get there. So I look at the statistic, I think it was like 74% of the engineers were born there. So I started to ask myself, so if there are a group of people who are ready to circle the globe, could we lure them to the far-flung cities of the world, like Helsinki, Tallinn, Hamburg, or Madrid, right? So the initial thesis for the company was actually that I thought how we can do it is by creating a marketplace. For one side, we have those borderless, highly skilled people, and then we introduce them to teams in far-flung cities of the world. And with this platform, we actually got hired people from 53 countries, 37 countries. But you know what happened, Neil? As a startup, you think you're solving a problem, you have a solution for some kind of problem. But what we learned was that the biggest problem for our clients was not actually finding those people. It was getting those people into the country. So immigration relocation became initially like a side business. And the funny thing was that the side business we were initially doing completely manually in Excel sheet and Google Drive. And first of all, this was growing much faster than the core business. And second of all, we just looked at the process and we thought, like, with the current technology, there has to be a smarter way to manage this process. So yes, in the summer of 2019, we fully pivoted the company, threw away everything we had built for 4 years. And that was the best decision for the company. Like what we have seen thus far. I mean, basically what we saw was that with this side business, which was the actual problem of international hiring, we became a painkiller, whereas as a hiring platform, we were just vitamin.
So from there, you built this platform that could automate the immigration and relocation process and ultimately provide businesses with a lifeline for retaining talent amidst this growing global tech skill shortage that we're finding at the moment. So can you tell me more about the tech that makes all this possible and how it works?
Yes. So basically to look at Jobbatical, so what we are doing is we're doing two main things with our technology and automation. We are, first of all, improving the experience for all sides, meaning that anything from, when an employee is being relocated, instead of sending all their passport information and filling forms in emails or doing it manually, we have automated everything from like click of a button, forms are filled. Upload your documents and then the system takes over and all this information will be then transferred into those forms, or to the point, like, for example, when we have, like, if you think of how this process has been working thus far, you have usually an expert or an immigration lawyer who sits and looks at the information, passport, where the person is going to, what's the salary level, what's the position, and etc. And then decides, okay, this is the best visa for this person. This is what they have to, this is the immigration track they have to take. We have already automated that assessment part, meaning that the information is put on our platform. And then our system is able to do the initial assessment, and say, okay, this is the track of immigration that person will have to go to. So what we are doing is gradually putting the expertise that has been in the head of the immigration experts or lawyers, depending on country, that's how you call. Now we are putting it into the system. And that's basically the core of what we're doing. And for all counterparts, it gives also the visibility, like as a HR team or hiring manager, you have full overview, what's the status of each and every relocation and how many relocations you have had, which countries and all of that. And as a talent, so this is where our core focus is, that it is, I don't know if you have ever moved to a new country, but moving to a new country is scary, nerve-wracking. You're making a life change. So there's a lot on that person's mind. And usually in a traditional way of relocating the person, then they are thrown between the government institutions, HR team, and all of those. There's a lot of confusion. So what we are giving is that we're giving the full overview. They get the full understanding of what the process is going to be like, what steps they have to do, and then click buttons and things happen. So basically we are really, it's like our focus is the user experience of the talent who is being relocated.
And on behalf of any digital nomads listening, or anybody that wants to relocate and take their highly sought after skill set and work somewhere else in the world, do you have any use cases that you could walk me through just to bring it to life? Anybody listening anywhere in the world?
So if use cases, let's move you to America, Neil.
Sounds good to me. Count me in.
So let's imagine that you have a new employer who has hired you in New York City. So basically, what now, Neil, you will get an invitation to a platform. Yeah. The platform is white labeled in most cases, and which means that it looks and feels like you're a new employer. Now you get on the platform and the system will start to guide you. Exactly. So you will upload your documents, you answer simple questions. Maybe you're taking your family with you. Now you will add their family members' information. All of those processes will be then run in parallel, and you have the full visibility of that. The system will tell you, and our support behind the platform, when is the appointment? Let's say you need to go to the embassy, how the information is delivered to the embassy. So basically you are guided throughout the process. And as far as now, Neil, you have to settle in. First of all, you have to get a short-term accommodation somewhere in New York, right? Yeah. And so on our platform, you get full support for that. And then your family arrives, and by that time, maybe you have already found your long-term place to live. And that's, again, all the support that we're giving through the platform with our partners, as well as finding schools. Maybe your kids need to go to school or kindergarten. So all of those things, basically what we are aiming really to become is the one-stop shop for relocation, that anything that you need is the health insurance. We work with a partner, a vendor who gets the information about you directly from our platform, and you don't need to fill any forms again. Go out and start filling your family information again. That all of those things will be covered on our platform, and either by us or our partners who are plugged into our platform. Does that make sense and give you the overview that you were looking for?
Yeah, the only question I've got left is, when am I leaving for New York? You have promised you're moving me to New York, but
we're very beautiful in December and Christmas time. So, but I think we are slightly late with that. So we have to discuss this timeline now.
No problem. And of course, for people listening, hearing about you for the first time, you've also done a fantastic TED Talk, which I will embed to the blog post that accompanies this episode so people can see you in action. But in that TED Talk, I think it was called "Why Passport Needs an Upgrade." So, and it's been translated, I believe, in something like 12 different languages. But can you tell the listeners more about that talk and what you wanted people to take away from it?
Yes, I think there are two core things where this talk is coming from, and this is very much what we are very passionate, and I'm very passionate about. So two things. There's one that is the current passport system. The way passports work and are designed is outdated. It's completely outdated. It was designed, the passport that we know as a passport was basically created after the First World War. And it was created by a very Western-centric organization, meaning that it protected, let's let in people from the Western countries, and it really does the opposite for countries outside. And what it meant was that time when it was created, it kind of also made sense in the economic wise, maybe, because back then the highly skilled immigrants came from the Western countries. But now, fast forward to where we are now, you look at where the highly educated, what are the top 3 countries where highly educated migrants are coming from? And those countries are not Western countries anymore. Those are India, China, and Philippines. So what it means for economists today is that the passport system is discriminating those people, very many of those people that we should be letting in, so that they could contribute into our economy, especially today when we are seeing the biggest labor shortage in human history, and it will get worse and worse in the years to come. So that's the one part of the story. So the that we need to redesign and rethink how we even kind of like what is the passport and how it should actually work. And the second part is the purely like technological side of it, and it is that there are so many areas in our life where we go to Amazon and click a button and you order things and things work and you expect things to work. But if you look at how the cross-border movement is working, then it's purely paper heavy, which means that there's so much space that to use the existing, and I'm not talking about future, I'm talking about existing technology to just improve the overall process so that the governments would save money, people would save time, companies will save time and money. So, so in my talk, I'm proposing some ideas and examples of what can be changed. But the funny thing, Neil, was that when I went to give this talk in America in Monterey last year, then they detained me. So I went to talk about immigration and then I was detained in immigration. So that was really good. Kind of it reminded me why I'm so passionate about changing this, how this process works.
I love it. Absolutely wonderful story again. And here we are at the beginning of 2023, and there's a lot of changes happening. I'm seeing a lot of changes in Southeast Asia. The countries are encouraging people to come from overseas and set up work over there. So I'm curious, how do you see hiring beyond borders changing the workplace for the better in the months ahead? What are you seeing there?
Yes, we are seeing very interesting things, I think. And in that sense, I always like to say everything has our growth. Basically, everything helps us to grow, right?
Yeah.
Even the pandemic kind of had its actually positive sides. And I think one was the impact to how we're working. And so we're seeing two things. First of all, we are seeing that the global talent shortage is impacting everyone in terms of employers, companies, like even the companies who did not hire before or even hire outside from their country before are starting to think about the need to hire from outside. And this gives two flexibilities. Basically, one is, yes, you can employ people in their native country, so they will stay where they are and will work for you. So that's more and more what we are all seeing, right? But there are two, like from our angle where we are seeing two major things. One is that the increase of basically luring people with the flexibility of choose where you want to work. So either you move to one of our offices, more and more clients are actually doing that, especially like the fast growth tech companies, that you either go to one of our offices and maybe you want to work in Barcelona for 1 year or London another year. And what is new, and this is something we did not see before pandemic, is that giving an option for people to choose to work from a country where the company doesn't even have an office. And I think this is very much connected also to the rise of the how I call them, the employer and record companies. So who are doing payroll in different locations, tech startups that have grown since pandemic in that field. So what we are seeing similar thing. So which means that, let's say you are a company from London, you don't have an office in Spain, but you have a talent that you want to hire who wants to live from Barcelona. So we see more and more companies saying that, okay, that's fine, we will take care of it. And then they have to take care of the payroll and there are providers for that. And we come in and we take care of the immigration. But this kind of flexibility we did not see before pandemic. And I think that's one of the things that I remember reading, it was, I think, 2015 already, when the Nomad List founder, Peter, said that by 2035, there will be 1 billion digital nomads. And I liked the number and it sounded good, but I didn't really see the math. Where does the math come from? But now I see that I think the math is coming from the pandemic. The pandemic gave like a kick. And why it did that was that a lot of people dreamed about working in different countries before, but their employers either didn't believe they can work remotely or they themselves, they didn't even dare to ask. But I think that's what the pandemic gave, a lot of trust in the flexibility and how it's possible to work. And now, as the employers need to show that flexibility is a new way to retain and recruit talent, we're seeing more and more this coming up. And I think that's exciting because, Neil, that's a funny story. We pivoted and we have done all these changes. But the original story of the name Jobbatical started from my thought, why I even picked this name. Obviously, it's job and sabbatical. But what I thought back then was that jobs were boring, commuting, cubicles. You didn't really like your manager. So it was kind of like something a lot of people had to do. And then you had sabbaticals, which were for dreams and, making things happen that you have always dreamed of in a dream location. And I predicted that one day those two will merge. So job will become a Jobbatical. And it's funny to see that in a way this is starting to come true. So it's exciting to see that.
Wow. I was going to ask you about the name and where it came from. So I absolutely love that. And of course, you mentioned the pandemic there. And I think over the last few years, it's taught everyone that business resilience is critical for success. So what advice would you offer to any young entrepreneurs that are listening?
Yeah, I must say, Neil, I think, first of all, resilience, I have learned now especially past 3 years that resilience is my middle name. So you have to, and I think that's one of the things. So before we get to the advice, maybe one of the things that really we have to be good at change. I think this is what is defining a great entrepreneur and great company. We have to be super good at change. But I think one of the things I would say to the young entrepreneurs is that I think building a vision is kind of like rock climbing. So you need to climb and climb and climb. But the main thing, don't look down because you may get dizzy and then you fall. It's very similar when you're building your vision. So just don't look down, continue climbing and you will get there. And I think one of the things I have learned especially, the past 3 years and in general with the journey with Jobbatical is that the world is much smaller than we think. And we are much more powerful than we dare to think.
And one of the things that I've not mentioned so far is that in your career, you've been the youngest CEO at MTV. And in 2021, you gave a TED Talk being the first person from Estonia ever to enter the main stage in the US. But I've got to ask, you've been on an incredible journey. What would you say the biggest lessons that you've learned in your career in tech have been?
Yes, I think, first of all, because I started actually my entrepreneur career as a 16-year-old inventor. And I think from there, I started to get my first lessons, made a lot of mistakes. And one of the mistakes definitely, so in terms of as like the core mistake that I had to change was that ability to say no. I think in order to succeed, you have to become super good at saying no. And it sounds harsh, and it's sometimes really hard, but the focus or keeping yourself focused, I think it's like I have seen how that helped to change things for me. In terms of tech, I think one of the things a mistake that I made, and I remember I listened to Brian Shelsky's interview with Reid Hoffman a bit too late. I think it was 2 years too late, that we tend to start building tech with tech, but first the tech has that whatever problem you're solving, it needs to be working in an Excel, which means that we started to build the Jobbatical 1.0 from my idea without really validating it with the market. Whereas the second Jobbatical was very much validated with the market because we started to build tech because we couldn't handle the volumes and the growth of the what was happening with that business in an Excel sheet. So I think when we are starting to build startups, we have to make sure that whatever pain we're solving or problem we're solving, that has to work before we start to build it and scale it. Obviously, there's no point to scale something that doesn't work. So if I would say that one of the things that I would take is that first, I think the thing has to work without you writing zero code, and then you start to build and write the code around it.
Fantastic advice. And of course, the main themes of today's podcast have been about technology and travel. And if anybody that does any amount of travel will tell you need a pair of noise-cancelling earphones to block out the noise and distractions, or a good book for those long flights. So we started the podcast talking about your origin story. I'm going to ask you to leave us with a song that we can add to our Spotify playlist that's important to you, or a book we can add to our Amazon wish list. All I'm going to ask is, what are you going to leave us with today and why?
Yes. So the song that I chose for you, I thought about it, and the song that I chose for you was Imagine Dragons' Thunder. And why that song? Because that song, especially this year, has a very symbolic story behind it. Because I told my team last spring that I was talking to my growth team that if they are going to hit the target that we have set, then I will go and dance for them on Times Square. And
I'm moving to New York, so I'll be there front row.
So next time. So, and you know what they did? They not only hit the target, they did it 2.5 times. So basically, and they chose the song for me, and I danced like there's no tomorrow on Times Square. It's on video. I had actually some superheroes who were locals on Times Square joining me. We had a lot of fun. And I think what that reminded me that I tend to forget, and I think a lot of us tend to forget, is that while we're building our visions, it's also important for us and for our teams to celebrate, to really celebrate our wins, because that gives the energy to do the next big milestone. So this is the song that I'm leaving you with.
Absolutely love it. Is there video evidence of this dance?
There is a video, yes. I will share with you.
I love it. And before I let you go, for anyone listening, just wanting to find out more information about anything we've talked about today, maybe even contact your team if it's a company listening, what is the best starting point for everything?
Yes, Jobbatical.com. So Jobbatical, actually the first time I put Jobbatical in Google, it was empty. So everything around Jobbatical is around our Jobbatical. So you will find it Jobbatical.com, contact my team or contact me directly on Twitter or any LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your powerful origin story there. And where essentially you noticed that the biggest problem for your clients in international hiring was not the hiring, but getting people into the country. And you took that leap of faith, and how you've leveraged technology and the journey you've been on. It seems like you were so far ahead of your time, because right now we've got the job skill shortage. People want the flexibility to work anywhere in the world, and businesses are willing to pay for that, those experiences and those skills too. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your story today.
Thank you, Neil, for inviting.
And if you pop over to my website, techblogwriter.co.uk, for the blog post that will accompany this episode, I will also include links to that Times Square dance that she talked about and her inspirational TED Talk too. And while you're there, you'll also find links to 2,200 other interviews. But if you'd like to slide into my DMs or send me an email, just simply email techblogwriter@outlook.com or Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @Neil C. Hughes. But that's it for today. So I'll return again tomorrow with another guest. But for today, just a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.